All right, everyone, welcome to a Tuesday edition of the MSP Initiative Live. Our special guest today, the one, the only, better than a Sony, it's a 90s phrase there, Joseph Landis. I like to call him Joe, but he doesn't, from Nerdio. How you doing today, Joseph?
How are you, George? Good to be with you as always. I
Yes,
saw
always.
you. I was living vicariously through you as I was watching you at the playoff game on Sunday. I
Mhm.
saw you on LinkedIn. So I'm sorry that your Eagles didn't make it, but as I was saying to you earlier, I'm a Washington football team fan, and we're not very good. So
Well, I will say this. Um, there was some unusually northeast style weather in in Florida this weekend. So I flew in Saturday night, and Sunday it was like quasi rain, cold, wind. Certain parts of the state I guess had like tornado like activity, which is not exactly usual in Florida. You usually get hurricanes, not tornadoes. But yeah, no, it was a lot of Eagles Nation down there. Obviously, a lot of our mutual industry friends in the mix. And yeah, Tampa definitely had our number for sure. But hey, listen, we weren't supposed to be there, right? NFC least. And at least we represented well. And I'll go a step further and say it was all, not great until Dallas lost. And then
that
like
was
equilibrium came to the universe.
that was like my best moment of Sunday watching them lose, especially the way they lost was just so beautiful.
I know it was. I mean, you couldn't have scripted that better. Just Dallas and all of their penalties, and then they make that they make that mistake at the end, and then literally kill their own clock. I mean, you couldn't have asked for it better. And the best part is there's so many people. I call it the Dallas media. That were like, oh, Super Bowl, Super Bowl, and I was like, no, no.
Nope, not Stephen A. Smith, that's for sure.
Well, Stephen A. Smith's actually a Philly guy.
Right, I know. Yeah.
Yeah, so like his whole career is based off the fact that he trolls Dallas, and man, does he love doing that. And
Loved it.
I love watching. I know, they used to be together. I love watching Skip Bayless get ripped up on his other show.
For sure.
But
Yeah,
that's
for
the
sure.
best. That's the best. Seeing that guy melt down is gold.
Well,
So
I'll say, I mean, again, I'm a Washington fan. I've been a Washington fan since I was a little kid. I grew up in Chicago, but when I was in kindergarten, my parents moved us to Silver Spring, Maryland. So, I'm a big Chicago White Sox baseball fan. I'm a big Bulls fan, but it was very hard to not be a Redskins fan when you're growing up. So I became a Redskins fan, and got to see the team win 3 Super Bowls, which was great. But it's been pretty lean years for a long time. And the thing that I was saying to you before we went live is I look at Philadelphia's quarterback. I look at Jalen Hurts. I say, well, I would take him on Washington. He seems very good. I mean, I understand some people don't like him, this and that, but when I compare to what we have, and I even heard, watching the Dallas game against San Francisco, I mean, people complain about Jimmy Garoppolo and he has flaws. He's like 100 times better than what we have for quarterback. So
well, I mean, listen, your guy is back on the street, right? He went to Minnesota for 3 years, and now he's available. You can pick
he
him up.
is. He never won anything either. He always threw the big interception at the end of the game. But I guess that's a good thing about sports. If you sort of tie it into the world that you and I live in every day, you get a lot of MSPs who really like sports. And in fact, we've been doing these events
I
called the
seen that.
Nerdio Stadium Series. We did one last night in Orlando, where I am today. By the way, the weather has continued to be northeasterly. It's like about 45 degrees in Orlando today, which is very odd. But went to an Orlando Magic Portland Blazers basketball game last night with a bunch of MSPs, and it was super fun. It's an interesting way to bond with MSPs, to talk to them, to sort of watch a game. A lot of them bring their partners, spouses, or whatever. Someone brought their son, and you get to know more about the partners. And it's like I say, Azure and sports is a good combination, right? So
Azure and sports. What's
right,
funny is that I'm sure a lot of the teams are using Azure actually for all their
probably,
analytics and statistics, right? So
yeah.
good times. But yeah, no, that's awesome. The stadium series. So obviously basketball and hockey games across the country, which is awesome. I'm sure if somebody would be interested in going, they can flag you down and
Reach out.
throw their name into the hat and see if they can get in.
You know what? Somebody reached out to me in a particular city and said, "Are you running a stadium series in my city?" I said, "No, but I'll take you to a game." So if anyone's listening who wants to go to a game with Nerdio, just ping me and we'll do it. And if we're in Philadelphia and George can join, maybe he'll come too.
Hey, the Sixers are still Sixers. I mean, the Flyers are a little bit dire straits, but the Sixers are still in it.
Yeah.
And now that football's done, the city's back to getting to everything else. So
yeah, that's right.
Although the sports radio stations here are dominated by football, no surprise. And I think Jalen Hurts probably is back for another season next year. But did I hear right that it's the Washington Commanders? Is that the name?
That's the speculation, right? The Commanders. It's gonna, God, I've been a fan for more than 40 years. It's very hard to change, But
that stadium needs to go, man. They need to rebuild.
Does I know they got to start from the top down, I think, pretty much, and start again.
Yeah,
but I like our coach.
The owner can go. The stadium.
I like Ron Rivera. I think Ron Rivera is a good coach. He was dealt a bad hand when he came in, but
no, he is a good coach, and quite frankly, he's from that Andy Reid-ish coaching tree, right? He used to be here in Philadelphia back in the day. So
he was a Chicago Bear, right? So he's tough.
Yeah, no, very, very good. Yeah, I mean, and he's actually been through a lot of health problems, and he's still on the field.
He had cancer. He had cancer last year. That was really inspirational.
Yeah, and he was like getting treatments like the day before the game and stuff.
Unbelievable. They had to hook him up to an IV at halftime. I mean, unbelievable.
Crazy.
Tough. That's tough.
You don't find those people growing on trees. That's for sure. No. So then the big thing, other than Pete pops in, he's like, Phillies are around the corner. Hey man, I got
from
you.
Philadelphia?
Pete's actually originally from North Jersey. He's in New York country. And we joke all the time, North Jersey and South Jersey, because South Jersey is like a suburb of Philadelphia, and and then they say, what about Central Jersey? Yeah, there's no such Central Jersey, it doesn't exist. So the state's a little bit split, but he said, "Go Mets." There you go. Now his true allegiance. So there's that. So the big thing, other than the stadium series, which awesome job, love that, is this guy right here. I'm going to share my screen. Nerdio Con.
The
first ever.
Yes.
So let me ask you this question. I'm sure you've been asked this many times. Why Cancun? Why did you choose that as your inaugural location?
When we started Nerdio a few years ago, it was sort of a little bit of an involved story how Nerdio started. I think you and I have talked before, George, that Nerdio was really founded out of an MSP, which you have a lot of expertise in that area. You come up with a great idea and you decide to productize it. So we started Nerdio out of an old MSP called Adar. Adar was sold to private equity, and we decided to run with Nerdio. So what we decided to do is when we sold Adar to the private equity company, we had a company meeting and we took everyone to Cancun because we felt like, some of the people were going to be continuing with us at Nerdio. Some were going to be staying in Adar to run the MSP. And we had a pretty good year. The MSP had a pretty good year. So we felt like it would be a nice thing to do for the company. And we really chose it because we all those of us who were there at the time liked being there. And we felt that, you and I see each other at all the MSP events. There's so many events. So many of them are very interesting and good. Most are somewhere in Texas, somewhere in Florida, somewhere in California. We said, let's try to do something a little bit different. So we said, well, what if we did it in Cancun? We were very modest in our expectations for our first year. We said, look, this is a user conference. We're not trying to replicate, what any of the large ecosystem players do. An event really for our partners, for our Nerdio partners. And if there are people who aren't Nerdio partners that want to come along, that's great too. We're happy to have you. But we said, look, we're gonna be very modest about it. We're gonna try to have about 150 of our partners. And we felt, with that, plus with sort of COVID and all the other issues going on in the world, we said, like, let's make it a little different and let's go to Cancun. And that was really the reason. The other thing I would say is just as sort of as an inside baseball point is that, we're doing it at an all-inclusive resort. So it's actually, if you're ever thinking of planning an event, it's way more expensive to do it at a place that's not all inclusive than is, right? And all inclusive is much easier. So we found a great hotel and we decided to do it down there. And we knew it would be a lot of logistics, but thank God it's coming along nicely and we're excited about it.
Wow. So all inclusive, 100%. I was just thinking to myself, I was like, yeah, that does make it easier because it's just this much per person and you're done, right? I mean,
Right,
it's
right.
all in.
And they can eat and drink and sleep and do whatever they want, and we don't have
Yeah.
to worry about like how many drinks is a person having and are they drinking too much? They just show up. And a lot of people, actually, a lot of MSPs have chosen to bring their families with them.
Well, expected, right? It's
Yeah,
kind of
which
a
is great.
vacation type thing. Yeah.
Not necessarily to learn about Azure, but to sit at the pool while they're learning about Azure. So
I always said, since we got started off on sports, Joseph, I mean, for some reason, and I don't know why, other than people building stadiums for a lot of money, my team ended up finally making it to a Super Bowl and winning one, thankfully, in 2017. But it was in Minnesota in February. It was -15 and it was very cold.
yeah,
And like, you should have this stuff in a place where you can enjoy the weather and kind of make it a little bit of a trip, right? So yeah,
right.
for that reason, Cancun's great for that, right? Because you can actually bring the family and make it a thing rather than being -15. And the ice sculptures, I heard, did not melt for a long time.
A long time. So yeah, so we're really excited. We can talk about anything you want on it. The content's going to be
Yeah.
great.
So talk to us. So it looks like the event is what, three days, right?
It's call it 2 days, 2 full days, and we're having a
Okay.
welcome reception the first night. But 2 full days of content. We've tried to set it up in a way where the whole group is together for certain presentations, and then we have, I would say a very healthy set of breakout sessions that people can go to. We actually have 13 vendors from the MSP space are sponsoring the event as
Yeah,
well.
you know what? Let's give them some love, right? Let me go ahead and share, and we'll give them a little shout out, right? Because they helped put your event on here. So here are your sponsors.
Yeah.
Microsoft, big man on the block there.
Yeah, Microsoft, our company is so tied to the success of Microsoft and Azure Virtual Desktop and Windows 365 that it was very natural for us to have them as the premier sponsor. But we're excited about all the sponsors, the diamond, the platinum, the gold. It's our first year doing it. Again, we didn't charge a ton of money, we don't think, to be a sponsor of this event. We tried to be very humble and very modest in our expectations. But we had to turn some sponsors away simply because we just didn't have room. And part of that's probably Cancun. We'd like to think some of it is Nerdio and a little bit different. But we're excited about it. We're going to have some good speakers, good participants, and excited to see about it. So, I think that if you're an attendee, if you're an MSP, you'll go and you're going to hear from some really good speakers in the main session. So just to kind of compare and contrast, you're going to have Scott Manchester, who's the engineering leader at Microsoft of Windows 365 and was the engineering leader of Azure Virtual Desktop. So there's kind of no person that knows more about VDI and Microsoft than Scott. He's been doing it back to the RDS days, for 20, his Twitter handle is RDS for you. So,
Wow.
So you get to hear him, and then you get to, on the next day, you get to hear Gabriella Schuster. Now, Gabriella was the previous channel chief at Microsoft, but she left the company to form her own company where she focuses on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And she's going to do a special session for MSPs on how they can incorporate DE&I into their practices and the importance of that. So, we've tried to and then we have Jay McBain, right? So Jay's gonna be down there on vacation in Cancun. Unfortunately, is giving us a little bit of time. So you and I have both heard Jay many times, and we get to sort of,
the amount of information that guy absorbs on a daily basis is pretty impressive. I have
unbelievable, right? So for him to be able to share with us, Kyle Hansloven's going to be there, Rob Ray is going to be there. So I think there's just a lot of really great people and speakers. Apologies, of course. It's inevitable that when I do one of these things, they'll start mowing the lawn right outside the condo here. So
I don't even hear it. So you're all right.
Good.
You're good.
So we'll have the main sessions, and then people will be able to go to breakouts. And at the breakouts, we've also tried to make it a combination of things. So, you know, some of our sponsors will speak at the breakouts, which will be great. Folks like PaxAid and others. But then, you know, you'll be able to go from kind of the least technical, where you just get an overview, maybe of Nerdio Manager for MSP, to something very, very technical, like how to deploy advanced auto scaling into your AVD practice or advanced image management strategies. So, you know, I'd like to think that we've created an event and a set of sessions, something for everybody. And I think having it down in Cancun allows us to also do some fun things. Like, imagine, I think one of the sessions we're having is cocktails with Carl at the pool, you know? So you'll be able to go and, yeah, you know, you probably would have chosen that one, you know? So you sit up at the pool and you learn, yeah, with like a whiteboard session, and let's talk about some topics while you're drinking a cocktail, you know? So that's what we have planned.
That's
and
awesome.
Yet, to answer Pete's question, I see we're going to record all these sessions and we're going to publish them on our website afterwards.
Awesome. That's fantastic. Yeah, because for the people who maybe don't even have a passport, Joseph, I mean, a lot of, did you know that like over 70% of the nation doesn't have a passport?
We knew that, you know who told me that was Rob Ray. When we were thinking of doing this, we went to Rob, who's sort of the source of all information in the MSP world, after you, of course, George. And we said, he's like, do you know a lot of MSPs don't have passports? And for me, having lived abroad for so many years, that was a very foreign concept to me. No pun intended. Like, who doesn't have a passport? But a lot of people don't. And in fact, some people who wanted to come to NerdioCon, they found that getting a passport now during COVID is very hard. So
yeah, like there's a backup.
There's a big backup. One guy had to drop out the other day because he couldn't get his passport on time, which was a shame. So,
I mean, unless you're willing to go sit at a passport office, which is like an all-day affair, right? Like if you get there when they first open, you put in like an emergency passport, you'll get the passport, but you'll be there all day,
all day long. Just right? So,
at a hefty price too, right? It's like double the money, right? So
yeah. I'll give a shout out to this great organization to anyone listening. If you ever need a visa or a passport renewal, having lived in, you know, India, Brazil, Russia, Czech Republic, Germany, and Israel, I had to get a lot of visas all the time. There's a great organization called CIBT. I don't know what it stands for, but CIBT. You go to their website, you basically click what you need, send them your passport, they get the visa for you very quickly. I don't know what they're doing or how they get it, but I think they stand in line for you, basically.
That costs a lot of money. That's a pretty cool service.
It's a great service. It's expensive, you know, but if you have no way like to get to where you need to go, it's could work, you know?
Yeah. Pete says it took him 6 months to get his last one renewed.
Wow.
He said, what a hassle. Don't let it lapse. It's good advice.
Definitely not.
I mean, and then go try and, you know, get a global entry interview. How about that?
Yeah, that's hard too. I've given up on that. So,
I mean, listen, everybody except for me pretty much had a good, easy global entry interview. Every time I've ever asked someone, how'd your interview go? I was like 2 minutes. And I'm like, mine was not 2 minutes. Mine took a long time.
A long time.
Yeah. I had very weird questions being asked.
I bet you did.
With all the times I get stopped in TSA, it just makes a lot more sense.
Yeah. So yeah, we're excited about the event. You know, I think we're gonna hit our target of, we said again, 150 participants. I think we'll be a little bit more than that. We really have had very few people drop out because of COVID. We had a couple, and it mainly had to do with cross-border stuff. Like they didn't think there was an MSP from New Zealand that wanted to come, and there was just too many restrictions on flying back. But we actually did something, George, that early on I thought was the right thing to do for the MSPs. We actually bought insurance for every attendee who's coming to NerdioCon, both sponsors, MSPs, Nerdio employees. And what we did, the insurance we bought was essentially, if you're down there in Mexico, in Cancun, and God forbid you contract COVID, you get sick. We hope that doesn't happen to anyone, but you do. Your hotel room will be paid for the entirety of the time you need to stay. So it's not like you're going to be tossed out on the street and you got to figure out something to do. All your doctor's appointments and visits and tests will all be paid for. So I think it gave people a lot of, you know, confidence that we were looking out for their best interests. We're doing temperature checks. We're doing the wristband thing, you know. So I think it's, you we're trying to go overboard to make people feel comfortable about
No,
coming.
100%. So like, this is just my curiosity. I haven't traveled out of the country since all of this started.
Yeah.
Before then, I'd be on a plane out of the country all the time. Me and my other partner in crime here, Alex Stanners, as you know, like guy lives in the air like you. Maybe not quite Rob Ray Scott Barlow, who like literally just raced to 1,000,000 miles every year, but
Yeah.
a couple 100,000 miles will do the job. Like, is there anything like going into Mexico? Like, what did you have to do anything special from a COVID? Is like, I'm sure you need a test, or like, how does it work?
No, so actually Mexico is really interesting. Going into Mexico, you need nothing. You just show up with your passport.
Oh,
And that, I guess, was Mexico's decision to they wanted to stay open. This is not at all any kind of, I know the show is not a political discussion.
no.
That's their choice. They decided to stay open. So you need nothing to get into Mexico. Going back to your home country, you probably need a COVID test. So the other thing we did, George, is we're going to have at the hotel, so nobody has to all the COVID testing happening. So, typically to get back in the US, it has to be within 24 hours. So we're going to have a big room with 50 nurses, and you'll get tested, you'll get the results within 6-7 hours, and you'll be ready to go. So,
wow,
yeah,
that's awesome.
and then if you come from a country where there's some unique requirement or whatever, we'll work with the MSPs. There's not too many of those. I think we have a few participants from Hungary, from Australia, from the UK. So if there's something that crops up, we'll help them with that as well.
And then, like, I guess as of today, right, the requirements to get back in the US is like what, the 24-hour test before?
24-hour test before, and proof of vaccination.
Okay, there it is.
Proof of vaccination or proof of recovery from COVID. And I think the airlines have gotten smart. I was just down in Cancun at this hotel a few weeks ago. So you kind of just load everything up into the airline's app ahead of time.
Okay.
And then you're kind of like, verified, right? So when you get to the airport, it's not like you're fumbling around with a bunch of papers and things like that. They just know that you're verified. They must have some person in the back end looking at everyone's documents, and then you're good to go.
That's awesome. What airline do you frequent down there?
United and American, I think, have the most flights. JetBlue also has a lot of flights. Kind of depends on the city. I think the majority of people coming to Nerdio Con are JetBlue, American, and United.
Cool.
As well.
So each airline has their own, like within their regular app, they have the ability for you to do the upload or whatever.
Yeah. So if anyone here is traveling or going somewhere, they pretty much start sending you alerts before you go. Like I'm going. I have 2 children and my 101-year-old grandmother and brother who live in Israel. Wow. So I've been trying to go to Israel to visit them for a very long time. I haven't seen my grandmother in more than 2 years. She's 101. May she live and be well for many more years. But she's 101, so I want to go see her.
Somebody should get from her the trick. What's her magic?
I'm just hoping that her genes somehow flowed down to me. But Israel closed the country when Omicron hit.
They're the most vaccinated country in the world, I think.
They are, I think so. But like the number of papers you have to upload to websites, it's very hard. It takes a long time, right? So your mileage may vary, when you travel, depending on where you're going. But these old days of like, jumping on a plane and just going to Australia for ConnectWise, IT Nation, Evolve, right? I know you did that. I'm planning to do it this year. It requires a lot more planning now, right? So
I was under the impression, I know we're going a little bit off topic, but since
all right.
I was under the impression that like places like Australia and New Zealand, like they just closed their border. You couldn't get there unless you were a citizen, right? And like I was talking to an Australian guy who, we met through the circles down there in ConnectWise land and such. And he sent me a message on Facebook Messenger this morning. We were going back and forth, and he's like, "No, you've always been able to go." I was like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah." He's like, "The flights, like you don't have as many flight options, but you could always go. You just need to prove vaccination." I was like, "I thought it was just straight up closed. Like you couldn't unless you were a citizen." He's like, "That's not true." I'm like, "Oh, that's news to me."
Yeah, I thought Australia was straight up closed as well. Israel was straight up closed. You could not go unless you were a citizen. My kids who have student visas, they were able to go up and back, but they didn't. But it was funny, George, when I was in Cancun at the hotel making the preparations a few weeks ago, so they had I went to take the COVID test 24 hours before. And I said, well, maybe it'll be positive and I'll have to stay here 10 more days. That would be great. So,
That's not a bad,
you know,
it's not a bad thing.
but
So,
no,
so just to be safe, and I don't want anyone to get jammed up. Like there are, like you can get at-home tests now, but I don't think you need like the lab test, right?
that's
You
right.
can't-
I don't, you need the lab, as far as I understand, you need the lab test there. You can't get in or back or whatever with the home test, as far as I've been told,
Okay.
I think
Just
so.
want, hey, I mean, I just want to put that out there so somebody doesn't get jammed, right? At the airport.
I personally have not been able to find an at-home test. I don't know if you've picked any up, but I can't find any in New York or Florida.
I haven't had a need, but I know a lot of people who, like they, whenever they come out, there's like, they put in like, like all the communities have their own like forums and Facebook groups and whatever. And they'd be like, oh, this CVS or this Walgreens just got a whole batch in. And then like, you would see like the hordes of people online going to those locations.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
haven't had a need to go find any. So I
Yeah,
know, so that's great. But I know in the very early days, if you need, like, you can, like right now, I think I can just go to like a CVS, right, and take a test. Like I won't get my results right away, right? They'll take a couple days. But in the very, very beginning, when we need to do COVID testing, here you go. Pete pops in. He says, "How many do you need? They come into our local stores regularly. Send me a message. I'll ship you some."
yeah, I would love to.
Well, you have to find out what stadium Joseph is at, so you can, send it to the right hotel.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, Pete. I don't know when I'll be. Well, I mean, I spend part of my time as I think you might know George in Staten Island, New York. So we're not too far from one another, Pete. So let's see.
Yeah, well, he send them right up to you. Send them to your Staten Island location whenever you get back there. I was gonna say the one that we would always use, right, if you needed a pretty good turnaround, was LabCorp actually had like a, they made it like a small little box, right? It was almost like you bought a pair of sunglasses,
Yeah.
and they ship it to your house. You do it, and you do it. They had a FedEx overnight, and then like each part of the country, like the one for our area in Northeast here is like New Jersey, right? So it overnight back to New Jersey, and you'd have your test back. And I was like, oh, that's pretty neat.
We did that on the bus tour last year, I believe, right?
Yeah, that was. I mean, it worked out great, right? Because it's like, boom, lab test. Here you go, PDF. Merry Christmas.
Yeah, super easy. So
yeah, that was slick. So like, since we have a little bit of time left, like obviously you guys were part of the announcement when Microsoft released the SKUs for, like the 365 flat pricing virtual computers, right?
Yeah.
Microsoft Virtual Desktop is what they call it? Or was that what they called it? Was it Microsoft Virtual Desktop?
So Microsoft released what was called Windows 365.
That's the one.
Yeah, and that sort of compares to Azure Virtual Desktop, right? So Microsoft's really trying to give users, if you will, different ways to access virtual desktops, and Windows 365 is more of a flat fee, a fixed fee way of doing it.
Got it. So how does all of that change? And this conversation comes up in a lot of different ways, but I'm going to be like tactical here. How does that change with this new NCE shift in Microsoft land? Does anything change with those?
I don't know. It doesn't change, as far as I understand. It doesn't really change from a Windows 365 perspective. I know NC. It's very funny. Like doing these stadium series are going to like we went to what was it? What was the last ConnectWise Evolve, whatever it was we went to. We took our Evolve group out to Top Golf the night before, and somehow we became like the battering ram for NCE. And I'm like, hey, that's not, we don't do that. That doesn't have anything to do with us. Actually, you should probably talk to Microsoft or whatever. But clearly there's a lot of angst around that. I mean, it's all over the boards and everything like that. But no, with Windows 365, I mean, you go into your Microsoft 365 portal, or you go into Nerdio and you just select which SKUs you want, and you're able to provision them for your users, and it's straightforward.
By the way, our friend Greg Sharp, who is out of the great country of New Zealand, says New Zealand is straight up closed. So now we have the answer to that one.
Well, we're not going there, I guess, huh?
A little bit different than Australia. Thanks for the heads up there, Greg. So now if you're going to Australia, you're not piggybacking to New Zealand. So and I know that, so, all right, so you got the flat SKUs, you can go to your 365 portal distribution, Nerdio, great. But I think I think I saw a comparison that you guys put out when they first released this, right, at that Microsoft Online conference,
Yeah.
where you did like you put both side by side from a pricing standpoint, and there was a significant price shift between the flat fee pricing and how Nerdio can go up and down with the auto scaling and pooled resources, right?
Yeah. So again, I guess the way to maybe start the conversation, if you will, is that there's different ways to provision virtual desktops, right? And
Mm-hmm.
as an MSP, you have to kind of think, what's the way that I want to do it? What makes the most sense for me, right? And it's not that one is right and one is wrong; it's just different. So we put together a comparison because we were getting this question, George, all the time. Like,
I'm
hey,
sure.
why would I want one versus the other? So we kind of said, and again, this is Nerdio's perspective. This is not necessarily Microsoft's perspective. I mean, again, we partner very closely with them, but sometimes we have slightly different perspectives or different takes on things. So if you were to ask your Microsoft rep, do you agree with this? They may or may not agree with it. But we kind of felt like, okay, if you're an MSP and you've got a customer with less than 10 desktops, and you really have no plan or no Azure footprint, you're like, I'm not interested at all in this Azure thing. I don't want to go to Best Buy and buy like 10 new PCs. I want to leverage my existing hardware. Then, probably Windows 365 is a great choice for you, because you can just, take the existing hardware you have, assuming it's in decent condition. You could sign up for Windows 365. You basically assign those 10 or fewer users, and they have a desktop in the cloud. If you have like really little to no desktop virtualization experience, and maybe you're already using Microsoft Endpoint Manager to administer your physical desktops, and you say, well, look, I just want something where I don't need any new technology skills or tools to get going. I just want to use familiar tools, and probably Windows 365 is a great choice for you as well. And then I think, maybe the other one that's kind of starts to get onto the line between the two is, if your end users require local admin rights, right, and they need their desktop more than 55 hours a week, that could also be a good choice. Because remember, with Windows 365, you pay for it once at the beginning of the month, and if you use it for 5 minutes or you use it 24/7, it's the same cost, right? On the other hand, if you're an MSP, which we tend to find this is more of the MSPs, if you're an MSP who publishes remote apps, right? You want to do remote app streaming, which most MSPs have some kind of app that they publish. It could be a Sage or SAP or whatever it is. That you need Azure Virtual Desktop because there's no remote app publishing in Windows 365. If you have a customer, let's say it's an accounting firm, and the quantity of their virtual desktops fluctuates throughout the month. Maybe an accounting firm gets very busy the first 10 days of the month, and then, some people leave. If they fluctuate during the month, then you probably also want Azure Virtual Desktop, because again, you're purchasing the Cloud PC license, the Windows 365 license once a month. With AVD, you could adjust in real time. And then I think the biggest one, and the one that I think ultimately makes, as you and I know in the MSP space, a big difference for people, if cost is your primary consideration, then we believe that in most cases, Azure Virtual Desktop is going to be significantly less expensive. Again, why? Because the model for Windows 365 is it's what's called a personal desktop. It's an always-on, one-to-one assignment of George to a VM, of Joseph to a VM, right? Whereas with Azure Virtual Desktop, you can do a personal desktop, but you can also do what's called a pooled desktop. And you could put George and Joseph and Pete and a bunch of other people onto one VM. And you could also do what you said at the beginning. You could auto scale, those desktops, and you could really bring the cost down. We believe, probably 58-60% less cost than a cloud PC. So
that's not I thought you were going to say 15 or 20%. 60% is huge.
It's huge. Now, are there MSPs that come and say, yeah, I don't care about that. I just want the mind, knowing that it's going to be $32 a user a month, and I don't want to fiddle around with auto scaling and all that. Yes, there are. Typically, those are, you might say the less sophisticated or less cloud aware MSPs. But as you and I know, in the industry, there's MSPs with all kinds of skills and all kinds of needs and all kinds of capabilities, right? So that's why I kind of think Microsoft was smart to do this, because there's sort of something for everyone, right? You can use Windows 365, you could have the peace of mind knowing you have a fixed cost, or you can use Azure Virtual Desktop, and in most cases pay significantly less than you would for Windows 365.
Wow. Well, that was a great side-by-side, high-level explanation, because, and I don't think I've ever heard it put out that way, right? You kind of made it really simple for the people who are like, why would I use the always-on SKUs? And then for everyone else, here's a way to do it without, like, let me ask you this question then, as a follow-up. So the MSPs who are using the pools and the auto scaling and the ability to kind of change things as the week and days progress of the month, right? Up and down, up and down.
Yeah.
How much time investment is there into managing that?
Yeah, not a lot when you're using Nerdio, right? So if you think about the concept of auto scaling, I know you and I talked about this once before on one of your other shows. What's great about Nerdio is that we automate the process, right? So you can go in and you can decide, hey, here's when I want desktops to go on and off. These are the times that people tend to work. I want, when the load on a host pool gets to 60%, I want you to add another host. When it drops to 40%, I want you to remove a host. Like, we give you so many different triggers and algorithms based on CPU usage, RAM usage, number of users, that typically for an MSP, you'll invest a little bit of time up front kind of setting the parameters and the rules, and then the system will take over and sort of see what's going on and react to what's going on. Of course, you can always, as an MSP, go in and adjust things, right? But we sort of keep making our auto scaling technology better and better. Now, people sometimes ask us, George, they say, well, can I do that with Microsoft? The answer is actually no. So Microsoft has very basic on-off auto scaling, VM on, VM off auto scaling. And to do that, you have to sort of write some scripts, and most MSPs, as we know, they're sort of not like PowerShell scripters, right? So, this is where I think it's good that we have a very tight relationship with Microsoft. I always say to people, we're a very typical Microsoft ISV. We take the core native technology and we build value on top of it. And in this case, a big part of the value for MSPs, in addition to the management layer and the deployment, is the auto scaling, is the cost optimization of the environment. So
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, does it take no time? No, it takes a little bit of time, but once you do it, you're going to save a huge amount of money, right? So
our friend Pete, after he gets you those testing kits,
yes,
says, here's my question that I get from some of the MSPs I work with. It's like, with so many working in teams and letting SharePoint operate in the background, where would a solution like Nerdio fit in? I see so many trying to figure out the cog in the wheel.
When we founded Nerdio, as you talked about, out of an MSP, our original mission statement was to empower MSPs to build successful cloud practices in Microsoft Azure. We're really all about Azure. And we still are. We feel like there's kind of no one else in the MSP space that's taken on the mantle of Azure experts. But if you look at our real DNA and where we came from, even when we were running an MSP, it was really about virtual desktops, right? So we know that a lot of MSPs, they rely on SharePoint and they use SharePoint, and we, are continuing to make investments in that area. But the area that we really add the most value is for MSPs who've said, I want to deploy my customers using a virtual desktop. And when that's the case, we think there's no one else that has technology like we have. Even, to be honest, we've now extended well beyond, what you might call the pioneers in the industry with Citrix and VMware and people like that. Like, our auto scaling is significantly better than anything Citrix has right now. They're a great company. They're a competitor. We obviously respect them a lot as a competitor. They've been in it for 30 years. But we really feel that if you're an MSP and you want to move into the virtual desktop world, we have everything you need, whether it's the cost optimization, but the day-to-day management of it, the deployment of the resources, figuring out what it's going to cost an MSP to do it. And I would say, and I know you and I talked about this, a number of times, and I never mean to say this in a rude or obstinate way, but if you're an MSP and you're not thinking about moving to the cloud with Azure or moving to the cloud at all, you're missing out, and you're going to be left behind. And the first step that most MSPs took to the cloud was with Office 365, and that was great. And now you don't find too many MSPs that are running Exchange servers anymore, right? Everyone's using it. But to continue to go out and buy servers instead of leveraging Azure, and really, quite frankly, leveraging the investment you've made in Azure Active Directory and many other things in the cloud to then extend your relationship with the customer to the cloud, you're not going to be competitive over time. And I think you could argue with me and say, well, I want to use AWS. Fine, that's a good solution too, and we don't have anything for AWS at this time, but we're big believers in Azure. And I think to me, it's the MSPs that say, I don't really know about this Azure thing. Is this like a serious thing? It's pretty serious, right? It's Microsoft's #1 investment, although after today, spending $68 billion for Activision,
I know. Wow.
Big
investment
too.
Xbox is going to be unstoppable.
I said to one of my former Microsoft colleagues, I said, the biggest thing I feel badly about is if, as a big gamer myself, where I still at Microsoft, I'd be able to go to the company store and buy Call of Duty for like $5 instead of $79 now, But Azure is a big thing. It's Microsoft's biggest investment, cloud, right? So I'd really encourage all MSPs to, if you've considered it and you haven't moved forward, consider it again. You could still come to NerdioCon.
I was just about to say, so it sounds like you're done taking sponsors on, but are there still room for MSPs to sign up?
There's a little bit of room left, because if you're a friend of George's, you're definitely welcome. So, go to nerdiocon.com, register, reach out to me if you want, reach out to you. George knows how to get to me. We'd love to have you, whether you're doing business with Nerdio or not. If you just want to learn, it's really a learning event, and we'd love to have people there. Awesome.
So if you're interested in taking a trip down to sunny Cancun, then let's get you there, right? Looks like it's just a tad over a month away. And, as long as you have a passport or you're willing to sit in a passport office, you should be okay.
Yep.
So Joseph, I know that you're busy jumping off to the next stadium, I think. So we appreciate having you on. We wanted to let the world know about NerdioCon while there was still a chance to get on there. And wishing you guys a great first conference.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having me. And thank you for everything you do, George, to strengthen the MSP ecosystem. It's really great to be partnered with you. I think I was just actually talking with our friend Tony Kai, who's in my company, last night. I was saying that I was going on this show with you, and I was reflecting to him how when I left Microsoft and I went to my first MSP event, which was IT Nation Evolve in Orlando, I didn't even know what it was. I was just told by my CEO, you need to go to this because we have a table that you need to think. And Tony said, the first person you need to meet is George Bardisi. He's going to tell you everything you need to know. And I've learned a lot from you, and I appreciate all of the coaching that you give me and everything you've done to help Nerdio be successful. So thank you.
We're very excited for what you guys are continuing to do. And like I said, best of luck to you guys. If you need anything,
thank you.
Don't hesitate to holler. Thank you very much, Joseph. And thanks everyone. We're going to cut it short, but this session is available on mspinitiative.com under sessions. And again, you can find Joseph online. You can find me online, and we'll be back again on Thursday, 1:00 Eastern time. Or again, you can podcast or watch these videos online 24/7, 365, mspinitiative.com. Thank you very much, Joseph. Safe travels, my friend.
Thank you. Thanks, George. Take care.
All right.